All right, we hit 6 o'clock. I'm Leslie Sandifer from the admissions office, and I'm going to hand it off to Jess, who's going to be your MC for tonight.
Thanks, Leslie, and welcome those who have already joined. As Leslie said, I am Dr. Jess Metzmeyer. Uh, I run the career shop at Center, and we'll hang out probably for just a couple more moments while we let some other people join in. But in the meantime, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to shout or use the chat function. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and get the chat function rolling. I'm just going to put my contact information in here because anybody is always willing to give me a shout. I'd love it. Welcome again to those who are just joining us. I'm Jess Metzmeyer. We are just waiting a couple more minutes to make sure everybody that can get in can. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. If others join, that'll be great. But I am very, very excited to have this conversation and really glad that you've been able to join us. As just a very brief introduction for myself and what we're going to be doing, I am Dr. Jess Metzmeyer, the Vice President for Career and Professional Development at Center. And I am really pleased to kind of moderate this conversation tonight. We'll mostly be wanting to hear, from you and your questions, but also we have some really successful alumni with us, as well as some of our faculty who are, really going to be the ones who are making a big difference in your life. And so we'll go through here at the beginning and just do a very brief introduction of ourselves. And then from there, we'll do some kind of brief, just question and answer that I'll, pitch some questions out to some of the alumni and faculty about some of the things that might be of interest to you. Along the way, if you have questions, please feel free to use our chat function. You can see there's already some folks have typed in some things. You can find my contact information there. And some others are already typing in. If you've got questions along the way, go ahead and drop them into that chat function. Then we'll be able to see those. And as we're kind of concluding some of the Q&A, we'll then swoop back into those questions and make sure that they get answered. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into our conversation tonight. As I said, I am Dr. Jess Metzmeyer. I run the career shop at Center and am also a Center College alum, so class of 2004. Also met my wife at Center. I've spent most of my professional career in higher education, and I can tell you, while that career has been throughout higher ed, it has only recently had me return to Center College. And I am really thankful to do so. Center College is an extraordinarily special place. And as you'll hear tonight, the place is really, really good at helping you go where you want to go and help you fulfill your dreams. So I have an awesome job of getting to help you do that with the help of some of the folks who are on the call with us tonight. So let me go ahead and move on to letting others introduce themselves. Emily, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so hello. I'm Dr. Emily Crabb. I'm an assistant professor of physics here at Center College, and I'm in my third year here at Center. And kind of relevant to the conversation tonight, especially, I'm also the advisor for our dual degree engineering program. I've helped kind of getting our new engineering major up and running. Also, just a relevant piece of information, though, my kind of PhDs in physics, my bachelor's degrees are both physics and computer engineering. So I do have some of the engineering background, and I'm happy to talk about it some. And I'm also happy to answer questions about engineering here at Center versus kind of at other institutions.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Lenny.
Hey everybody, my name's Lenny Demoranville. I'm a chemist here at Center, and among the many things I do is teach some chemistry classes and work with students in undergraduate research. I also mentor one of our cohort groups that's going to be graduating this year. And so I'm sort of here to answer questions about chemistry and STEM and health professions and undergraduate research and those sorts of things, and look forward to talking more.
Great. Thank you, Lenny. Next up, Jeff.
Hi, everyone. Jeff Heath. I teach math and data science here. I've been at Center. This is my 18th year. So engaged quite a bit in undergraduate research. I've got, I think, about a dozen students this semester. We'll have another 7 or 8 this summer. One of the things that we started about 5 years ago was the data science program, and then shortly after that, started the Center Sports Analytics program. So I'll be able to share a little bit about those as well.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Let's see. Let's go to some of our alums. Prashant.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Pleasure to talk to you today. I graduated from Center in 2019. I was an econ, finance, and math double major while at Center. I currently work in the investment management industry, and between Center and investment management, I did a graduate degree at MIT. So happy to talk about my Center experience and why it set us up for great success.
Great. Thank you, Prashant. And finally, Michael.
Hey, thanks, Jess. My name is Michael. I live in Lexington, Kentucky, which is where I also grew up. I graduated from Center in 2014. I got a bachelor's of science in economics. After Center, I got a master's in development studies from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and then worked as a research fellow with economists at Harvard Kennedy School before pivoting to tech, working at a startup where I'd actually interned one summer at Center. And that startup was later acquired by a company that's a digital bank based in Brazil, where I now work as a senior software engineer.
Fascinating. All right. Well, thank you, Michael. So that'll be our team tonight, and I do appreciate the faculty and alumni for joining us. As I mentioned before, we'll do a bit of a Q&A with our faculty and alums to kind of get the conversation started, but we do hope to have plenty of time to answer your questions and have a bit of conversation with you towards the end as well. So as we're talking, if questions or comments or thoughts come to mind, feel free to use that chat function and just type your question right in there. And kind of as we're finishing up the conversation, then we'll kind of loop back to the chat and start going through those conversations. If there's anything absolutely pressing that your question just has to get out right now, feel free to go ahead and speak up as well. We are happy to hear from you. But with that out of the way, let me kind of jump straight in with you, Emily. Because you mentioned in your introduction your role both in physics but also in engineering. So, as you think about being a professor of physics, but also your instrumental role in developing Center's engineering program, can you talk a bit about the evolution of engineering at Center and how the student experience prepares, them for graduate programs and careers in engineering?
Yes, so Center has a long history of engineering. People don't always realize that, but we haven't had an in-house engineering degree until recently, but we have, alums from decades ago who either did our dual degree engineering programs, which we have with Washington University in St. Louis and the University of Kentucky, and those continue to today. And then also who just got a bachelor's degree and usually a STEM major here at Center, and then went on to graduate school or straight into industry in one of the engineering fields. So we have a a recent alum who graduated with a PhD, with a bachelor's in physics and is now doing a PhD program in electrical engineering. So kind of transitioning directly from center to engineering programs is kind of a long history. But for various reasons, we've kind of now developed an in-house engineering major that really builds on our really strong STEM programs, the really strong math, physics, and chemistry, computer science, and data science. But now we have an engineering major, and it is we are seeking ABET accreditation for the major. You can't actually apply for that until you have the first graduating class, which we hope will be in the next, I think there'll be some people in the next year or two who will graduate with either an engineering major or an engineering studies major. So we're developing two majors here. They're on the books. You can declare it if you come. So we have students who declared both of those majors this term. Engineering is like a very STEM heavy, focused on becoming, mechanical, civil engineering flavored, like lots of tech classes. And there's an engineering studies major, which is smaller, more designed to be more flexible. There's electives, there's double majors as an option. It's easier to study abroad. So there's kind of another track that some people have declaring that they're interested in architecture. So there's someone who declared, studio arts and engineering studies. And we envision kind of all these paths will continue going forward. There'll still be the dual degree path. There'll be the engineering major, the engineering studies major, and there'll still be students who major in chemistry or physics or biology and then go on to graduate school. So there's kind of just an expanding array of engineering options. We have an engineering faculty member now. That program's growing. So I think it's a really exciting time for engineering at Center, and it's also really growing our opportunities for students where there's a lot more industry ties, like people in, our new engineering faculty, Dr. Christine Goebel, is reaching out to industry, but industry is also reaching out to us. I got an email recently from an engineering firm in Lexington who's looking for an intern for the summer. And now that we have an engineering major, we're kind of on their radar. So we're kind of building more ties, and I think there's just more and more engineering opportunities here in kind of all different ways. And there's a minor, there's a major, there's just lots of different options to kind of customize it to your interests.
Emily, I wonder, so Center, of course, is renowned for being a liberal arts college, and now we have engineering with it. I wonder if you can speak to what it's like to have engineering as part of a liberal arts college and how that is a unique experience.
Yeah, so I think it is, as you said, just a really unique thing and a really valuable thing because you still do all the liberal arts things, but you get an engineering degree too, and they're really integrated. It's not like they're two separate things. Our new, engineering exploration class has a sustainability tag, I believe, or one of the capstone classes will have a sustainability tag. So it's sustainability is built into the engineering curriculum. And the gen ed classes will help get you writing skills and communication skills that can serve you really well in your engineering degree, and that you might not get at a big research focused engineering school where you're one of hundreds of students in your class. Instead, you're still taking all the small classes and getting all the individual attention, both in the engineering classes and in your kind of general education classes. So I think you'll come out a really well-rounded individual who's not just ready for their first job and their first few years out of Center, but you're ready for your job 5 or 10 years out of Center. You have more teamwork skills and more communication skills that can really set you up for a future career. And talking to people, alums from, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, who did one of the dual degree programs or went directly from Center to a graduate program and worked in engineering, they often talk about how great Center was for their career in kind of all the non-technical ways, their communication, their ability to move up in their companies. So I think it really does set you apart from someone who went to kind of a big engineering school and kind of just went through the curriculum and was all in big classes and never got kind of that personal attention and opportunities.
It's interesting you say that. I was a couple of weeks ago speaking to an alum from the 70s who is the CEO of a major engineering firm. And he was making the same argument about how, your first few years you're doing the technical work, but where engineers really excel in their careers, then when they can take that to the next level and how do they build companies, run businesses. And he said for that reason, he'd hire a Center grad every single time because he knows they've got those additional skills as well. So if we kind of think about that kind of varied path to success, Michael, that makes me kind of want to ask you a question because you didn't study computer science directly at Center, but you were telling us that you're a software engineer now. So I wonder if you can kind of tell us how Center prepared you for your career and that path that got you where you are now.
Yeah, definitely. I One of the best compliments I got from one of my engineering managers after I pivoted to become a software engineer was he said, I don't think of you as a software engineer. I think of you as a problem solver. And what Center really gave me was the skills to structure my thinking around solving problems, but especially what Dr. Cobb was talking about, that communication as well. These things that are sometimes labeled as soft skills, but that are very hard to develop and are very valuable. And I remember my first year at Center, I was taking Humanities 110 with Dr. Emmett, and I thought I was a great writer. I thought I was great at everything coming out of high school. And I got a solid B minus on one of my essays. And she was like, your ideas just aren't very clear. Like, this could be clearer. And when you get into the work context, people, it's a real gift if someone takes time to give you feedback on your writing, because often, they don't have time, or they are afraid they're going to hurt your feelings, or they know what you're trying to say, even if you're not saying it in the clearest way, so they'll just let it go. And that third case is the worst, because often they don't actually know what you're trying to say because you were just miscommunicating. So to have that individual attention that Dr. Cobb was talking about, to have people who really engage with your writing, who have high expectations of you, and are willing to put that red ink on the paper, really helped me grow. And it's something that has benefited me as I've pivoted from seemingly perhaps unrelated things, working, in essentially like a pre-doctoral fellowship in economics, to, now a software engineer. But a through line there is just structuring, problem solving, structured thinking, structured communication.
Yeah, so I find it interesting your story there because it sounds like you probably would not have expected to be where you are today when you were at
Yeah.
Center, and yet Center prepared you for it. And I wonder if you can think about kind of perhaps how your life would have been different if you'd chosen a different college or university, or more
Yeah.
specifically, how the Center experience was kind of uniquely good at helping you go where you wanted to go.
Yeah, I think that I mean, it's always interesting to play that kind of. Well, I did study economics, so to play the counterfactual game is
Uh-huh.
something that's always interesting. But I think that one of the things, just I was talking with my wife about this before, about there's a question, especially as a software engineer. One of the things I like about engineering is there is that culture of the person who just taught themselves, the person who didn't even go to college. And there certainly are lots of things that I've learned after I left Center. But I think the intensity of the learning experience that I had at Center, as a result of the community that you're in, that the amount I learned in that amount of time, I think would have been basically impossible to do on my own. So I think that being, in that residential environment, where, I'm engaging, not only with the professors who, really care about teaching, and one of the things I was privileged in having my graduate experience was I got to see, okay, what's another institution like? And granted, there are different variables. I was in the UK, it was a master's program, but they're the professors who are really engaged with their students were the exception rather than the rule. Out of all of my classes, I had one maybe where the professor was really engaged, and out of 4 years of classes at Center, it was the other way around. I had one, maybe who was less engaged than the norm. So I think one of the ways that Center uniquely set me up was just that intensity of the learning experience that came as a result of that learning community.
Yeah. Your story reminds me of one of my own. So when I left Center, I went to the University of Chicago, and there was one evening where one of my former Center professors came up to see me, and we had dinner. And my University of Chicago classmates were shocked that one of my Center college professors would come see me, right? And many of them had gone to Big Ten schools or something of that nature. And to me, the thing that was shocking was that they were shocked that the kind of hands-on engagement experience with faculty was so much a part of what we had done, and that helps you kind of find all of those opportunities and strengths that you might not have even known kind of were there. So I think you're right, Michael. At least to my experience, that's some of what makes it special. And as I think more kind of about that, like how do we engage students in some of those hands-on experiential opportunities, Jeff, that kind of makes me want to come to you in the conversation. You've done a lot of that kind of experiential work with students, and obviously, like we're not here to talk about basketball tonight, but with the men's national championship game last night, I got to kind of bring up a lot of the work that you do in sports analytics. And also, obviously, everyone should know Jeff does a lot of cool things in pharmacology and that kind of thing, but he does a lot of it with students. So I wonder if you can spend some time talking about your work with center students across, math and data science, but then also specifically, some of those hands-on things that you're doing with them to help them get prepared for those things that they might think are coming and those things that, like Michael, they may have never predicted were coming.
Yeah, sure. So one of the cool things about being at Center, of course, we're an undergraduate institution, so all the faculty are still engaged with research. But when we need a research student, we don't have graduate students to go to. We have our undergraduates. So we have undergraduates, even as early as their first year, that get engaged in research. That could be in the academic term, so it could be for academic credit, or it often occurs in the summer as well in the form of a stipend. So where students can live on campus and have the opportunity to engage with faculty and research and make a little bit of money, right? It's no secret that I'm a big sports fan. In fact, Jess, I had my class, my data science 230 class, do a statistical project on March Madness. I mean, it's kind of hard not to, right, given the
Right.
timing. And so we actually did pretty well. If you would have asked me last week, we did great because we had all Final Four picks for the men's and the women. Didn't predict either champion. Of course, there's a little bit of randomness there involved.
Yes.
Some years we do a little better than others, but still, it wasn't a bad performance. But a little closer to home, a few years ago, I think 2020 started the Center Sports Analytics program, where it's just a neat opportunity for students to practice those statistical modeling skills, data visualization skills, and communication skills on center athletic data. So we have, I think, 25 center athletic teams here, and we are working hand in hand with about a dozen of those. So anything from football, baseball, volleyball, track and field. We're starting to do the swim and dive, and I'm leaving several out right now. I don't want to give an exhaustive list, but we are working with the coaches to provide valuable insights to them based on the data that we have at hand. So it's a really neat opportunity for students to engage with that data, large scale project where they are practicing those skills that they're learning in the classroom, working with teammates and collaborating, and then providing that insights to the coaches in a way that they can have sort of actionable ways to gain insights on their own team. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, can you mentioned a number of things I think that are really interesting. First of all, you mentioned, kind of students in multiple majors, right? I heard you talking about math and data science and such. But then, all of that research, takes time. And so I wonder if you can talk about how students, where they come from when they're doing work with you in terms of academic majors and how that kind of structure of their life, where does that work fit into their kind of rhythms?
Sure. So as I said, we have students get involved as early as their first year. So we have a few first years working with us this spring. We'll have another couple in the summer. Then we have some seniors, that have maybe put a few years into it already. Some of those students are like me, and they're pretty sports savvy, and some are athletes. In their own sport. And some, may not be as much of a sport fan, but it's an opportunity for them to practice those data analytic skills that are directly translatable to healthcare, to marketing, to economics, to finance. So these same skills in communication are ones that they will take out. It doesn't matter what field they are after graduation. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That, that kind of like intersection of multiple interests and majors and studies is almost like the sweet spot there in analytics, it kind of sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that kind of, thinking about how students can perhaps consider multiple courses of study and how that comes together to fit their particular interests makes me kind of want to switch to you, Prashant. You're on the hot seat now, Prashant. Here you go. You ready? So you mentioned in your intro that you were a math and econ and finance double major, right? Uh, and so, with econ and finance, for those of you who are wondering why I said and twice and called it two things. So can you talk about how it was that you decided upon that option, and how you like managed the rigors of two majors, and why you wanted to do that and how that was of value for you?
Absolutely. Well, it's it's kind of serendipitous that Michael is on the call because little does he know he actually played a pretty big decision in me choosing center and choosing the economics program. I think I'd seen a flyer when I was in high school that had Michael's face on it, and it had his story about going to the London School of Economics, and I was just I was so excited to think that there was a pathway like that open for me. And, initially I was interested in international policy and things like that. So his pathway was pretty attractive. And I was really motivated to study economics at Center. And I thought that that was going to be my path. Through a very generous scholarship that I earned at Center, actually, I had the opportunity to pursue economics and a computational science. And I was kind of exploring for a little while what that looked like. And I think part of the liberal arts education is that you have a lot of time to actually land on something that you want to do. So I had some time to figure out what that second major would be. And I landed on math for a lot of reasons. I mean, I was always kind of had that quantitative mindset, and I wanted to do something there. And out of all of the sciences, that one felt like it was good. And I enjoyed a lot of time in Dr. Heath's classroom as well. So I think it ended up being quite a good decision. Um, but on the rigor of it, I mean, center's challenging, and a double major at center is even more challenging. So there's no getting around that. But I think that number one, it was just an amazing preparation to make the rest of my post center experience much easier. I think Michael touched on this a little bit when he was talking about it's so much better to have someone critique your writing in the safe space that is college, that is a center classroom, than it is anywhere else. And I think that same message resonates for going through something incredibly hard like a center education or a double major. I failed a lot, but I learned from it, and I benefited from learning those things in Danville, Kentucky, and not whenever I was really on the hot seat at my job. So I think that was one, just, it was rigorous, but I think I benefited from that rigor. And also, like Michael touched on, the support model at Center was just incredible. Number one, the faculty to student ratio is just is I don't know what the exact number is, but I feel like it's single digits to one. And so it was hard. I needed a lot of help, and I felt like I could always go to office hours and was able to build a great relationship with faculty and stop in any time with any kind of question and had no hesitation to do so. I don't think I would have survived without that, and it was a huge gift for me. And then the other thing, also like Michael mentioned, it's no surprise that we're both alumnus because I think we both, we definitely went to the same place. Uh, is the residential community and how tight knit of a bond you build with your classmates, your peers, and your friends. Um, I My first math course at Center was Calc 2, and I didn't think I was ready for it. But the person that sat in front of me was also my one of my hallmates my first year at Center, and we just hit it off. And to be able to sit together at any point in our residence hall and work on problems together was fantastic. And I ended up being in his wedding, and we're best friends to this day. And it's a great story, but you build so many of those really tight relationships being so close with people, and it turns out to be a really nice support model at the end of the day.
Hmm. Uh, Speaking kind of a support model a bit, so I know that when you left Center, you spent some time in Chicago, and now you're in the Boston area. And similarly, Michael, you mentioned being in the Bay Area before you moved back to Lexington. So, I wonder if you can speak about, your experience of going from Danville to then, some of the largest cities in the country, and how you felt prepared for those experiences as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I certainly only picked the cold spot, so Michael was smarter than me on in that regard. I mean, it wasn't just Danville, Kentucky. I grew up in a small town in Murray, Kentucky, and it was a huge change for sure. Um, but to a degree, I felt like I was always I mean, there are common things you can find in big cities that you can always be ready for. I love food. I loved sports, and at least one of those places was good for at least one of those things. And so you you can find community in a lot of different ways, and I think Center sets you up for that. Even if you're in a small campus and it's easy to find people, or you're in a bigger city, I think you still find that there's this neighborhoody aspect everywhere you go. And if you can kind of view the world through that lens, it's quite easy to get immersed. But it's good. I mean, I think there are a lot of ways to find yourself in big cities, and I think what I found is that the center mafia is real, and it might be a big city, and Danville might be a tiny place, but the alumni network is massive, and I've just been constantly surprised by how many center alumni and people in the center community broadly I ran into in Chicago and in Boston.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I'll tell you, that was my experience too. As soon as I moved to Chicago, I felt uh, right at home and like I was prepared. It's a world-class city, but I had had a world-class education and I was ready to go. And so, if I can kind of stick on that world-class theme for just a moment, obviously, kind of a focus of our conversation tonight is around STEM and STEM careers. And so, Lenny, I want to pull you in here too. As we think about, STEM careers and STEM education, and you're chair of chemistry. And so, how can you help me think about what it's like for students to seek world-class, if you will, we'll stick with that, a world-class STEM education at a place like the center?
I think a lot of it has already really been mentioned, but I'm gonna echo some of those things from my perspective as a faculty member instead of as a student. Right? We've heard a lot about the personal relationships that you make at center with faculty, the ability to just sort of walk into office hours, walk into our office, ask questions about what you're struggling with, and get that support, right? Center is really rigorous, and there's no getting around that. But we're also here, we're dedicated to teaching. I get up every day loving that time that I spend with students, helping them find those aha moments, helping them figure out what it is that they are interested in. We've got great support systems in STEM for tutoring and drop-in, and those are also sort of development opportunities, right? So chemistry has started something called a learning assistant model, where in addition to me in the classroom, there are some students in the classroom with me that are helping answer questions. And so that's available to some of our more senior students who are thinking about going into teaching careers or into graduate school. And so they're getting some training on how to do that. They're tutoring students in the evenings. And so all of those things sort of uh, come together to really support you as a student in developing that education that you want. And then we've also heard some about the ways that undergraduate research springboards things. The past couple of weeks, there was a conference this past weekend, and we took students. A couple of weeks ago, we took 13 students to the American Chemical Society national meeting where tens of thousands of chemists get together and talk about their chemistry, and our students are presenting there and getting to meet people and network with people. We brought an awesome scholar onto campus that talked about the work he had done with the East Palestine train derailment a few years ago and looking at that. And so even at a small place like Center, you're getting the opportunity to interface with some of those. And then I think the other thing that we do that's really the unique piece of going to a school like Center is that we're committed to the idea of the liberal arts, right? And so it's not just about learning the STEM fields. It's what I forget now who was talking about it, but the engineer that can communicate and the scientist that can communicate. And so our students leave, and because they've taken those writing intensive courses within STEM and outside of STEM, and have those abilities, they're better at their work. and we sort of nurture curiosity, right? And so the idea of a liberal arts education where you're learning across multiple disciplines, you're getting to learn things about the way science interacts with other parts of the world. And so one of my favorite classes that I teach is a first year course called Science on Stage, and I co-teach it with a theater faculty member, and we explore scripts that are based on science, and we get to see the ways that science teaches us something about the humanities, but something about society and what it's how all those things interplay together. And it's just a great opportunity so that when you get out into the world, you're broadly curious, you're broadly interested, and that sets us up for success.
Mm. Well, that's really helpful. I like the idea of, talking about, how that you can kind of curate that curiosity, if you will, and find those opportunities. And, as the career guy, I would say, I'd probably make this speech in all of these conversations, but particularly for students that are interested in STEM fields, having had kind of real hands-on experience, be it in math or data science or physics or engineering, chemistry for sure. Those are critical experiences for students uh, if they're trying to get straight into a job, or specifically if they're trying to get into graduate school. And one of the advantages that I see from my seat at Center is that the scale of Center and the kind of faculty engagement allows students um, unique opportunities to kind of fulfill some of those experiences. Whereas if you're part of a massive crowd, just to be very honest, if there's 5,000 people in your first year class, there aren't as many opportunities for you to get those experiences and to build out that resume or that application for graduate school. And so when you hear somebody like Michael say he went to the London School of Economics and Prashant say he went to MIT, that's not by accident, right? It's because they were able to do some really interesting things in their time at Center. So I'm going to do one other thing, Lenny, with you, because you're in chemistry, and a lot of people that study chemistry have an interest in going to medical school. And so I wonder if you can uh, do a little bit of a deeper dive for us in the event that we've got folks on the line that might be interested in being pre-med, and just say a bit about what the pre-med experience is like at Center.
So if I might, I'm going to broaden that a little bit to talk about pre-health in general.
Yeah.
Right. So many of our students come in pre-med, but many of them are thinking about pre-pharm or pre-vet or pre-PA, whatever those things are. And so we've got a specific set of faculty advisors for each health profession and a team of 3 advisors for pre-med specifically. And so these folks are knowledgeable about the coursework and experiences that students really need in order to get into the medical school program that they really want to get into. And those personal relationships that are built with those advisors are really key to getting into med school, right? And so during the first and second years, those advisors are helping students set up opportunities for shadowing, sometimes in our local hospital that's just walkable from campus, in thinking about what courses they're taking and thinking about developing that resume. Later in their third and fourth years, as students are thinking about where to apply and how to apply, they're getting that personalized advice based on their career, their interests, what they've done at Center, on when and where they should apply. We've got MCAT, which is the test you take in order to get into med school, kind of like the SAT or the ACT for med school. We've got MCAT coaching and prep resources. Because you have built a relationship with those advisors, you are getting some individual mentoring on personal statements and the other application documents. This weekend, I was talking with a student that's applying to medical school, and we were talking about letters of recommendation, and she was worried because you have to put in a long list of names, and we were talking about the professors that she had chosen, and she was concerned that they wouldn't be able to say deep enough things about her. And we talked about all the things that those people would know, and I said, other people, right, are going to get letters that say this person took my class in this semester and got this grade, and that's about all the professor knows. You've got this real personal connection with lots of people on campus that are able to say that. And that continues even after graduation, right? So some people decide that going straight into medical school, they want a little bit of time to catch their breath before after the end of undergraduate and take a year do some other things and then go to med school. And our advisors are just there, still alongside them during that application process as well. And so, the strong science background from coursework at Center, that personal attention, it's successful. So last year, 83% of our first-time applicants got into med school. Um, and we're consistently in the high 70s, low 80s in that percentage. The other part is once you're there, you're used to being challenged. And I think Michael and Prashant both mentioned this. They got to where they were going, and it's like, well, this is hard, but it's not that hard, right? That it's med. I'm not going to say anybody comes back and says med school's easy, but they look around at their cohort and they realize that they are really ahead of their other students because they've learned not only the materials, but they've learned how to study. And then that liberal arts and communication skills comes back in when they're beginning to go into the clinic in their third and fourth years. And so that's sort of what we do throughout the career. We even start before you get to Center potentially. So we've got a summer health immersion program where students that are interested in health professions spend a week on campus. You hear from alumni that are healthcare providers. You do a little research project, and you get ready to be successful in your first science classes at Center. And so that's something where even before you start, you've got the opportunity to sort of do that deep dive.
That's wonderful, Lenny, and it kind of nicely puts a bow on some of the questions and conversations that we've had. There's a lot of really high quality educational experiences that you'll have at Center, but the kind of vein that runs through it all is a whole bunch of people that care deeply about you as an individual and will help you make sure you succeed. And I think that's probably that key special thing that'll help you get where you're going to go, and probably even at a higher level than you dream right now. That's all of the Q&A that I had kind of planned with our alums and our faculty. So we do have about 15 minutes left, a little bit more than that. And so I'd love to open the conversation here to our guests. So, prospective students, prospective student parents, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or, at this point, you can also feel free to speak up. Let's see. Peter, you've got your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you all. I'm a prospective student. I'm from Lexington, Kentucky, so right here in-house, so to speak. And I'm kind of curious about how undergraduate research in the STEM fields, or maybe broadly, works with, say, doing study abroad. Do you find that students are able to do, say, a summer abroad and still be able to get their ground running with research? Or what is the balance there that you've seen in the past?
I'll jump in and say I've had many research students that have done study abroad, right? Part of what we do is the center term abroad, and so many of our STEM students take advantage of that. We've got some long semester programs that offer opportunities. I don't know about undergraduate research, but to get some STEM credit, and so that sort of thing is available. In the health professions, there's a internship in Merida in Mexico, and so some of our students take advantage of that. And then I think the only caution is that you do sort of need to plan ahead, right? So particularly in some of the STEM fields, things build on one another. And if you in your first year are talking with your academic advisor, they can help you map that out to make sure that, the time to go abroad is this semester or that semester, and it still works together.
Great question, Peter. Thanks for asking it.
Yes, thank you.
And I would say you'll find, well over most center students study abroad at some point. And also, somewhere in the 85 to 90% do an internship or undergraduate research in their time as well. So most students are finding a way to have both of those experiences during their time at Center. Are there other questions? I'll just say for a moment while I'm waiting to see if anybody else has other thoughts. Your question, Peter, and then Lenny's response made me think about, the way we work in the Career Center is to be very intentional about helping students make those plans. Right, so we'll begin engaging with you as a first year student and talking to you about what kinds of things you think you might want to do. Not everybody knows exactly, right? But as we have ideas of where you think you might want to go, then what kinds of experiences can we start to plan for you? What kinds of alumni might we connect you with to start doing some shadowing? If, for example, you thought you might want to be pre-med and you want to start having some experiences in a hospital, or what kinds of mentors might we set up for you? And then how do we think about when you might want to study abroad and how we kind of schedule in, some critical internship or research experiences in your academic calendar, knowing that's coming. And so part of, we keep talking about being personal, but part of that is our ability to know you as an individual and then therefore know what you need and want and, like help you create a schedule and a structure that is just for you. And that's how you get the most out of the experience. And, I keep coming back to how it's different than if you're at a massive place that just simply doesn't have the scale of faculty and staff to support that. Right. So that is kind of how we'll do that. Let's see. I think we've got a couple of questions coming in here. Let's see. Chief asked, can you tell me more about double majors? Does anybody in particular want to take that? I know many students do. I was a double major myself at Center. My wife was a double major at Center. Can any of my panelists want to jump in on that one?
Well, I can just say a little bit that it's very common. I mean, and it's very possible, even with majors that might be considered like harder to double major in, like physics, we still have lots of students double major. And, some of them double major in things that maybe naturally overlap, like physics and math. But then we definitely have students double major in like physics and a language, and those have basically no overlap at all, right? So we have students we have a current senior who's double majoring in physics and Chinese, right? And then we have a current a sophomore who's planning to double major in physics and German and spend a semester abroad. So again, double majoring maybe requires a little more planning, but you can fit in double majoring and studying abroad. As long as you're kind of like planning ahead, you can definitely achieve double majoring. I will say the one major that's going to be a little bit harder is the engineering major, but again, it will be possible with some of the other majors as long as you're planning ahead. But that one will be a little harder because that will be kind of the biggest major credit-wise and course-wise on campus because of some accreditation rules for being like an accredited major. But for kind of any of the other STEM majors, I would say it's very achievable to double major.
And Emily, while I have you there, speaking of that, Austin did ask a specific question about engineering and study abroad. And I don't know if you can say much more on, kind of how you think would be best for students to arrange that.
Yes. So, I've talked to like Dr. Goebel, the kind of who's planning out a lot of the engineering curriculum. She's the head of the engineering program, and definitely engineering majors can study abroad during center term at least once, that maybe twice. Like that's very achievable. And summer term as well, because we now have a summer term, and that tends to have 1 or 2 classes abroad every summer term as well. So that's definitely very achievable. A full semester like a long term is a little harder with the engineering major. The engineering studies major, it's definitely very doable. The engineering major, it's a little harder. It might be possible depending on kind of if you come in with credits, like maybe you have some AP credits or something. And also, I think there is a future where we will have kind of more partnership with engineering schools abroad. We just don't have those all set up yet because it's all pretty in flux. And I think there's also some possibilities for summer engineering study abroad through Keys, Kentucky's kind of consortium of study abroad. I think actually Dr. Goebel and one of the German professors is kind of thinking about developing a program for maybe summer 26 or 27. So some of the things are in the works, but it's definitely very doable in center term and in the summer. Long term, if you want the engineering versus the engineering studies major, maybe a little harder, but possibly still doable depending on kind of your planning ahead.
And just in the event that there are any of our prospective students that are curious about center term is a 3-week term that we have between the fall and the spring semesters where you just take one class. And so it sets up really well for students to be able to study abroad. I was a double major and did a full semester in London. My wife was a double major and it didn't work with her schedule to do a full semester, but she did a center term in Ireland and still talks to me about it. Still, like yesterday, was telling me she wants to go back to Ireland, and that should be our next family trip. So it is certainly possible, but I think you got to make those plans for it. Let's see. I've got a question about pre-meds. And Lenny, maybe you know the answer to this. How many pre-meds go directly to medical school, after their center career? Or do students more frequently do some sort of a research interim year before applying to med school?
I don't have the stats for that. I can say it's become more common for people to do the research or something else in an interim year. But I think that is almost more by choice, right? And so that people are saying I've just spent 12 years in or 13 years in K-12 and 4 years in undergrad, and before I commit another 6 years or whatever to that career choice, I'm going to take a year to develop some other interests and spend some time doing that. And so I've been talking with a student that's doing that, and it really is just like I didn't want to try and do this all at once during senior year, and I decided to take my foot off the gas a little bit in senior year and focus on some other things, and then take a year to do some fun stuff, working in a medical internship, and then planning to apply anyways. So it was part of the intentional plan of that student. It wasn't so much I'm looking at the question where it says it have to do. It wasn't so much a have to do as much as a chose to do.
Mhm. Yeah, and I also don't have the specific numbers to that, but from the Career Center, we see a lot of those students come through, and I'll say, you know, the overwhelming majority of center students get into medical school when they choose to apply. It's probably the best way I would say it. Some students choose to apply, in such a way that they go straight into it. The vast majority of them are successful, you know, 85%, or I mean it's really really high. There are others that, like Lenny said, prefer to do something else, and then we in the career shop work with them to be very intentional about that. Like, so if you're going to take a year, what does that year look like? And how do we help you find something that is very fulfilling for you, but then also is a good springboard for you, so that you can talk about that still in that med school application when you apply. So that'll be part of our kind of conversation and planning with you, whichever way you choose to go. Any other questions? If not, let me take about the last 3 minutes here just to open the floor back up to, any of the faculty or alumni that were so great to join us, through this conversation. Was there anything else that like popped in your mind that you were thinking, oh man, I wish I would have told them? Please feel free to kind of jump in with any, relative thoughts to our conversation tonight.
I'll just have an anecdote because we've been talking about double majoring and studying abroad. We have two senior double majors in physics who one double major in Chinese, and then we have another one who's double majoring in CS. And in both cases, we had like intentionally arranged our class schedules to make sure they could finish their double majors. Like we made sure we didn't put a core class they needed in our major at the same time as a core class they needed in another major. One student needed like 4 exact classes to be in different times, and it was all kind of an email thread to make sure that happened. And that just doesn't happen at a big school where there's hundreds of students. So I think that really kind of shows how Center's unique. Like we will make sure you can do the things you want to do. You have to plan some, you have to talk to us, but we will like be your partner in it rather than just saying like, this is what we offer, take it or leave it.
Yeah, and I mentioned at the onset that I had spent most of my adult career in higher ed, but only recently returned to center. What Emily just said is profoundly unique. Just please understand, like that thing does not happen everywhere else, and that's the kind of student focused engagement that quite literally will change the trajectory of your life. Michael, jump in.
Yeah, I think the thing I would say is something that we haven't talked about as much. We were talking about majors, but didn't talk as much about all the other aspects of campus life. And I think, you know, Jess, you had asked, like, how is your center experience different than if you went somewhere else?
Mhm.
Nowhere else I went would I have been a student athlete, competing for my college or university. And running for 4 years at center was a big part of my experience. And I came in, you know, in some ways like academics, that in high school I was good, but not great. And I got a lot better at center through just, that like real attention to a point where, I was all conference at the end of my senior year. And that's less a testament to me than it is, to our coaches and my teammates who are pushing me, year round for 4 years. I think I might have alluded to this. We were also talking about the Prashant talked about the center mafia and the center network, and I think part of it, like in absolute numbers, it is just smaller than a bigger school, but it feels bigger because the depth of the experience that you have means that a center connection, even if all you have in common is that you went to center, is a really deep connection. And then Prashant and I had a chat, but I was looking, I was like, oh yeah, we were both resident assistants, we were both members of Phi Kappa Tau. We both studied economics, and then and so we have these, kind of three things where we overlap. But then there are things where, we don't overlap. Prashant did the wind ensemble. Prashant did like the, student investments. And, there were things that I did. I mentioned, athletics. We probably studied abroad in different places. And so I think that that's what leads, Prashant mentioned, his, the lifelong friendships he made. If you looked at the people who were the groomsmen in my wedding, they were all friends I made at center. And that was in part because, we just had so many of those experiences stacked together, whether that was, studying together or running together or, doing community service through our fraternity together.
Mm. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate you mentioning athletics too, because at center, students are able to do athletics and major, sometimes double major, and study abroad. And not to continue to hit that point, but that is unique in higher
And
ed to be able to make all of that happen and succeed like that.
you had asked about, how do you balance the rigors, but it makes life a little easier, right? Like it's just like your priorities become very clear. It's like you leave class, you go to practice, you go to Cowan, you enjoy Cowan for a little bit, and then you do your homework. But that structure and that community, and not just athletics, you could be on the stage, with Lenny doing doing a
Right.
play. You could be, performing in the Wizard Black Box Theater. But I think that the fact that half of the students are student athletes is just indicative of the ways that center students are plugged into much more than just their studies.
And I'll
Thank you.
jump in and add, Michael was talking about the bonds and relationships you form between yourself and other students. But they're also like one of the rewarding parts of my job is that I'm still text message with students from 10 years ago, right? That there are students that I stay in close touch with, and you're building that sort of relationship as well. And the one student in particular happened to follow the college professor career and is now working at a school, and it was sort of lifelong mentorship. Like I would call her a friend now, but we were also working together when she was putting together her application materials to apply for jobs. And so, it's kind of fun that those relationships develop as well.
Yeah. It'll be the 4 best years of your life. I promise you that. And you'll still be best friends with all those folks decades later. That is definitely the case. Okay. Well, I think it's 8 o'clock, so we're right up against the end here. I'm going to go ahead and end this, but let me say thanks to our alumni and our faculty for joining us, and mostly, thanks to our prospective students and their families for joining. We are really pleased that you joined us. We're really excited about you being part of the center community. And if you have any more questions, any of us would love to have that conversation with you. I dropped my email at the beginning of the chat. Please find that, or you can find anybody online. And the folks in the admissions office are always ready to help. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us tonight. And I look forward to seeing many of you on campus in the fall. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.